Hi everybody, I'm Jose Stevens from the Power Path, and recently I did an interview with Michael Stone, and the topic was shamanic power. And there was so much interest in the interview and the topic, and a lot of questions that I determined it would be a good idea to try to answer some more of those questions and talk a little bit more about shamanic power here. So one of the things I want to mention here about shamanic power is different from what we think of as ordinary power in the world, like political power, or, we say somebody has a powerful position in their work, or, in a corporation or something like that. There's a real difference. We tend to think of power as control over people, or dominance, or the ability to rule over people, for example. And that's not what shamanic power is. Shamanic power is capacity. It's the ability to have influence. Now, you don't have to be vocal or loud or an extrovert to have influence. Some of the more powerful people in the world have been relatively quiet. They've been people, even like monks, like Thich Nhat Hanh, people that have a distinct presence to them, but they may not, have all the insignia of power, drive fancy cars, sit behind a large desk, and all those kinds of things. So shamanic power is more having to do with invisible power. It's not the kind that your eyes necessarily see. It's the kind that you feel. You feel that when you're with them, that they have power. And people have asked, well, is power chi? Is it like energy? Well, it's related to energy, but it is not energy itself, because real shamanic power comes through spirit. It comes through essence. It doesn't depend on the energy of your body, for example. You can be in great shape, you can be a person that's highly energetic, but you might not be powerful at all. In fact, you might use your energy to pursue negative things, addictions, bad behavior, all kinds of things that you might not think of as being powerful. So shamanic power is not the same as energy either. So there's three reservoirs in the body that do build energy. And those are the third eye, the brow, the heart, and the navel, which you can't see me gesturing right now, it's below the screen, but the navel area, the dantian. And those are traditionally the energy reservoirs that people build and develop, fill with qi in martial arts, qigong, tai chi, things like that. That contributes to being powerful. It's helpful to have those reservoirs filled. So how does one do that? This is a huge topic, so I'm only going to be able to touch on a few things here. There's power places, there's power objects, there's power practices, there's what is power. That's what I'm mainly concentrating here on, is what is power. So power comes from being with people or objects that are more powerful than you are. It's fairly obvious. You go stand in the sun. The sun is very powerful. We're somewhat less powerful than the sun. So we can absorb some of the sun's power and become a little bit more sun-like, and therefore a little bit more powerful. We can stand below a giant sequoia, for example, and receive some power from a great tree, or from a waterfall, or from most things in nature are filled with power, and some of the practices of shamans around the world are to spend a great deal of time outdoors in nature, in beautiful, powerful places, and like on a seashore, for example, in front of the waves, and just simply receive all that power from nature. And you can build your power that way. That's a very effective way, and it's also a very enjoyable way to build power. And you can also do other practices. There's, for example, meditation, there's contemplation, There's Tai Chi, and I mentioned those things, martial arts type activities. So you can bid for power at any time. You know, we as human beings are power-seeking creatures. Some people are uncomfortable with the word power. They think, oh, you know, that's too much trouble. I don't want to deal with that. It could get me into trouble. But when we look at, for example, little children and plants and animals, they're all bidding for power all the time. They're, you know, it's the most natural thing in the world for a child is to try to walk, you know, to crawl first and then take those first steps and begin to walk. That's a bid for power. And little by little, the child grows up to be a young person who's able to run and jump and play sports and do all kinds of things. They master language, master many things, and they're becoming more powerful with each one of those additions. And plants seek the sun, so they rise up and compete sometimes with other plants for the light. And so we're all moving in the direction of becoming more powerful. What else would we be doing here? That's one of our major objectives as human beings. And again, it's not power and dominance over people or things. It's simply capacity. It's the ability to do more and to be more influential. So you can bid for power anytime you want to. And but if you do bid for power, then shamanically speaking, then you better be ready. And if you're not ready, you may fall on your face. You may have a humiliating failure or something like that. So that's not going to kill you. It could, but in most cases it won't kill you, but it'll simply teach you that you have to prepare yourself a little better. You need to be in better physical condition. You need to be better emotionally more balanced. You need to be more spiritually connected, which is a big part of being powerful. And so those are going to ensure that your bid for power will be more successful. Bids for power can be anything. They can be that you, like I mentioned before, they can be that you want to get married, or you want to have children, or you want a promotion at work, or you want greater responsibility in your community, and so on and so forth. You get the idea. So these are all ways that we all bid for power as we go through our lives, and these things make us more powerful. So one of the things I noticed with the questions that people were asking about power was that I had people say things like, well, you know, if it just wasn't for my health, I would be powerful. Or if I just didn't have to deal with this nasty divorce, I could be more powerful. And so on and so forth. There was a lot of concern about that like there were these things in the way. And yes, there are things in the way of becoming powerful shamanically. And yet, I'm reminded of something that I learned from Angeles Arian a long time ago, who was at one time on my dissertation committee, many, many years ago. And she said, where you stumble, there your treasure lies. And that's a very, very important and powerful notion, is that the things that you might consider being in the way of your being a more powerful person are the very things that are going to help you to become more powerful. So if your health isn't good, then dealing with poor health may in fact make you into an extraordinarily powerful person. And that's happened for many, many people. There's good examples of that. People that overcame horrific physical problems, and in so doing became extraordinarily influential and powerful. And it's the same thing with any life condition. Some big problem, you lose your job, or you're demoted, or you are going through a breakup of a relationship, or all the various things that challenge us throughout life. All of these things can be a great gift if we just see them that way. If we see them as ways to defeat ourselves, then that's exactly what's going to happen. We're going to become less powerful. And if we see them as ways that are going to challenge us, to test us, maybe in fact they were given to us as an initiation by our own essence to become a more powerful person. So never look at what seems to be on appearances level an obstacle to being powerful. Never see that as being something that is there to defeat you. In fact, it's there to help you to become more powerful. Now, some people ask, well, what are the energy leaks? What are the power leaks? What are the things that cause you to lose your power along the way? And yes, there are those things that we have to look out for. They're mostly fears. Fear is the biggest obstacle to becoming a powerful person. And there are very distinct kinds of fears. The two fundamental fears that human beings struggle with, all human beings struggle with these two fundamental fears. They're the fears of abandonment and the fears of entrapment. And of course, they're two sides of a coin. You know, half the world is busy running towards someone, and half the world's busy running away from everybody because they don't want to be trapped. The other people are scared of being abandoned. If you look carefully, you'll find that usually you have both of these in operation, and they're biologically based. They're based on being in the womb and not wanting to remain there, but also not wanting to leave there. That's the biological base for these two fears. And there are actually 7 behavior patterns that are primary in preventing you from becoming a powerful person. And those are sometimes called the 7 obstacles, or the 7 chief features, or 7 deadly sins. You could call them whatever you want, it doesn't matter. And they're basically greed, self-destructiveness, self-deprecation, arrogance, martyrdom, impatience, and stubbornness. Every one of those patterns is based on fear, and every one of those patterns will definitely interrupt and interfere with your becoming a truly, in a shamanic way, a truly powerful person. You know, people think, well, arrogance and greed make people more powerful, but they really don't. They actually, in the end, they'll deprive you of power, and this is very evident when we look at, you know, politicians and people like that are really tremendously desirous of being powerful, but somehow miss it, somehow don't end up being powerful. So these are all different ways of that you can struggle with your power, and they're worth really erasing. And there are definite procedures and process for erasing. So one of the questions that has been raised is, why do I want to be more powerful? Well, if you're a little child and you're crawling on your hands and knees, think of that child saying, well, I don't need to be more powerful. I don't think I need to learn to walk. I don't think I need to talk. I'll just crawl around on my knees for the rest of my life. Well, you'd think, well, that doesn't make any sense at all. That's, you know, of course they want to learn to walk so they can get around, and they want to learn to talk so they can communicate. Well, that's why we all want to be more powerful, so that we can do more, we can have greater capacity, we can have the ability not only to seek change and to transform ourselves, which usually comes with a great deal of enjoyment and pleasure and other amazing gifts the Spirit has for us, but also it can provide us with the opportunity to make a difference in this world, to do our life task work in a very effective way. In order to do your life task work, that which you came here to do, you need to be powerful, because there's many things competing with that life task work. Distractions and, like I mentioned earlier, addictions, all kinds of things that can drag you away from that which you actually came to do. So if you want to do what you came here to do, you want to do your mission, you need power. And you need to be able to tolerate it and get comfortable with it and grow it. So somebody's asking, what exactly is power? That we could discuss forever. But a very simple definition that I use is that power is capacity. It's growing your capacity. You can have a little bucket of water or a container, and you can carry just a little bit of water with you. Or you can have a big bucket of water, and that might supply not only yourself, but it might give everyone else around you a drink. So that's power, you know, in a very simple description. It's the ability not only to take care of yourself, but the others around you, to possibly heal them, to heal the world, to do many things, to bring delight to so many people in this world. That's what great musicians do. They bring immense pleasure and joy to so many people through their talents. They have to have power to do that. So power is capacity, and power is related to how big can you dream. So it is definitely related to your dreams as well. So I was going to tell a little story from my most recent book, Encounters with Power. This is the book, Encounters with Power. Publisher is Sounds True. And it's a book of stories from my life, outrageous stories. Its subtitle is Adventures and Misadventures on the Shamanic Path of Healing. I tell you, most of the stories are misadventures. There are stories about how I learned what not to do, or, you know, what to avoid on my path of power. Most of them are very humorous. Most of them are, like I said, outrageous. And I'm going to tell you a story actually that didn't make it in to the book because it got edited out. There were a number of stories that did get edited out because it would have made the book too long. So I'm going to tell a very, very short story here. This story took place a number of years ago when I was traveling in the Far East. I was traveling in Thailand with my wife Lena. And I'm not going to go into all the different things that we did and adventures, but we went from Thailand to Laos, and we took a boat down the Mekong River. It was just absolutely stunning, beautiful. And then we took a short hop flight to Cambodia. And as many of you might know, Cambodia is the place where Angkor Wat is, the great temple complex that goes back 1,000 years, Buddhist temples, and a place of a great education and all that. And it's truly a remarkable place, and I highly recommend it. It's dramatic and extraordinarily beautiful. And we spent several days there, and we were walking extensively through the temple complex and the ruins, and we came to this marvelous tumbled down temple, because some of them had been totally rebuilt and restored. But in the restoring process, they sort of lost their power, their energy. And so this one was tumbled down. It hadn't been restored. It was in ruins, but it was extraordinarily powerful. I could feel it myself. And when Lena and I visited that place, it was a huge university, basically is what it was. It was a Buddhist university. The minute I went into that complex, I felt like I knew this place. I'd been here before. I'd studied there at some time in the distant past. It felt so familiar to me. But it was so hot that we didn't have it. It really wasn't possible to spend any time there. So reluctantly, we left there and went back to our hotel where we could take a swim. And then Lena had to go back to Thailand because she had some dental work done. And I decided to stay on in Cambodia and go and return to some of these places in Angkor Wat that I really wanted to spend time with. And so I went back early one morning because it was very hot that time of year. It was about 110. And you had to go places early in the morning. So I went early in the morning at daybreak to this fabulous temple, the university. And there was nobody there. I was the only one there. I was so excited. And I walked into it, and there was a long hallway with various ruined statues and things. And I was just walking very slowly and carefully because, well, you know, the ground was uneven and there were rocks and things. And all of a sudden, I got this very, very clear image in my mind with the words cobra snake. And I barely had time to catch my breath when a huge snake fell out of the ceiling right in front of my feet. It was so big, it landed with a thud. It was about 8 feet long. It was big around, and it didn't have its hood deployed, but I could tell that it was a cobra because I've seen them before when they didn't have their hoods out, and this was clearly one. Now, fortunately, the cobra landed at my feet and took off as fast as it could in the opposite direction. So it cleared away before, you know, anything bad could happen with me. And I was stunned, really shocked, and amazed. And of course, then I had an adrenaline rush and a sort of attack of post-fear. And then I had to remind myself that there was absolutely nothing to be afraid of. And I began to do some of my shamanic practice around getting past a fright. A susto is what it's called in Spanish. So I continued down this hallway, and very shortly I came into a large room where there was this an old Buddhist nun sitting there with some incense. And she gave me the most beautiful, cheerful smile. And any residual fear I had from the snake just dropped away. And she looked at me and she gestured with her hand that I should sit in front of her. And I did. And I felt that I knew her. She was recognizable to me. Of course, I'd never really seen her in my life, in this life, but I just felt like I knew her. And her face was so beautiful with just, there was nothing holding back her humanity. And she gave me a blessing. She just gave me a beautiful blessing. And so I went from the shock of the snake to this beautiful blessing. Now, snakes are transformational. So instantly I knew that the snake's appearance was there for a purpose. It wasn't just an accident. And it was there not to harm me, but to actually signal that I was about to meet a great being and that I would be blessed. And the blessing lasted very, very briefly, and she sent me on my way, and I was transformed for the rest of that day. In fact, I would be willing to say I've never been quite the same since. I walked away with tremendous joy, and my heart was open, and I felt like something dramatically, miraculously powerful had happened to me. Now, that was an encounter with power. It came unannounced. It came suddenly. Sometimes a bid for power, and I didn't even know I was bidding for power, it was a subconscious thing. Sometimes these encounters with power happen without any warning, like instantaneously. You have no time to prepare. They just happen, and very often those are the most powerful events of your life. So that's a brief story that didn't actually make the cut for my book, Encounters with Power. There are other books that I can recommend that are all related to power, this topic of power, because it's such a big topic. This one is called The Power Path. and it's by New World Library, and a book I wrote quite some years ago, and it has a huge amount of information about this very topic that we're talking about. And then if you're interested in reading about the obstacles to power that we talked about a few minutes ago, and you want to learn techniques for getting rid of those obstacles, then I highly recommend this book. Let me get the shine off the cover. Transforming Your Dragons. And that's another book that I wrote quite some time ago, but also very popular, and one that's enormously informative about how to deal with the obstacles. So next weekend, I have a retreat out in our land outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico here. It's one of my inner shaman retreats. I give those every year. And this one is focused on advanced techniques, advanced shamanic techniques for developing more power and more capacity and more influence, and for awakening more. So I highly recommend it. There are still some spaces in it, and you can find out more about that by going on our website, thepowerpath.com. And also, it's going to be listed here on the site. There's a link in the comments. There's a link to that. Also, a link to the interview with Michael Stone. So, refer you to those. And I'm getting the wrap-up sign here, so that's as much as we can do today. Thank you for listening.